Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Big Dudes in the Trenches. I'm Doug. Over there is Bug. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing, man?
Decent, decent. Been a long week at work.
I
Glad to
I
be
feel that.
talking some football instead of still being at work because that was possible. But we're here.
It's always good when you don't have to be at work anymore and you finally get to relax a little bit. I'm on my weekend. I know you probably got work going tomorrow, but I don't. I'm pretty
Yeah,
happy
and
about that.
then I took a couple days off because it's been quite the month and a half for me. So
Brutal.
anyway, that's not why we're here.
As much as fun as it
So
is to commiserate about work.
So we're here to talk about the spring leagues, which are kind of numerous. It's not very often that we talk about all of them. Um, we, however, do like to focus on what was the XFL and USFL, now just the UFL. We will be talking about that all season. But there are some other ones too, and I think it's worth at least shouting these leagues out and learning a little bit about them. So we're going to do a whole slew of international leagues today too, which I think is kind of cool. But of course, most of our time will be on the upcoming UFL season, since, as you can tell by Bug's attire, we have some investment there. So
I gotta say, I have not been like this big this as big of a USFL fan over the past couple of years as I have with the XFL, and that's mostly been a matter of the timing of the XFL has seemed better to me. Uh, and I grew up with the XFL, and I do think that's where a lot of the divide came from. When you saw people vehemently defending one versus the other, typically it was our age group that was defending the XFL, and typically it was my parents' age group that was defending the USFL. So I'm excited to see the two leagues merge. I think that was inevitable. I think if the AAF was still around, it would be an even bigger United Football League. The kicking situation would be a little more in question.
or
But
the same exact size and just
yeah,
gotten better.
just suck it, AAF. You guys are dead anyway.
Right.
But I mean, there's already been a lot of interesting things happen, and even before going into the XFL, they signed that deal last year, and that's carried over into the UFL. Specifically, the NFL is talking about changing kickoff rules, and they're looking exactly at what the XFL has done and what they're going to bring into the
Yep.
UFL. So, very exciting to see, and it's very understandable why I'm excited about this and why other people are excited about this league this year as well.
You might be thinking, Doug, why are you not wearing your XFL hat? I know that you have one because you wore it last year, the DC Defenders. I am instead wearing Texas A&M hat because, let's be real, the only league that Texas A&M players are worthy of playing in are these minor leagues.
I like it.
Miles Garrett gets a pass. Other than that, maybe Von Miller. He doesn't get a pass anymore. Nope.
I don't think
To
so.
the UFL he goes.
I don't think
Memphis
so.
Showboats legend Von Miller.
But I think what makes sense to talk about briefly, we're not an NFL show, we're not a CFL show. We really stay away from what we consider to be the major professional leagues because it's an area that is kind of hard to get into and kind of hard to talk about in any depth with the limited access that we have. So
Right.
it's important
And
to talk
especially
about
with
it.
the CFL. I mean, we didn't
Oh
grow up
yeah,
with the CFL either.
yeah.
So
Well,
I
but the
understand it's been around longer than the NFL, and there's some really great traditions there. And we do talk about the Grey Cup every season,
yeah.
but it's not the focus of the show.
But you're probably going to recognize some of the names of players from either league. And I'll get to kind of what I broke down with the UFL is games that I'm excited to watch. And then we'll get into some of the players that I'm excited to see, some names to watch, either from last year or some previous NFL guys. I'm sure some of these guys are CFL as well. It doesn't stick out to me the same way, obviously. So
You're a
you're good. I think we end up seeing a few more Memphis and we definitely see more St. Louis games on here for obvious reason, right? Like,
Yeah,
come on.
because you were the one picking the games that you wanted to talk about.
I'm the one picking them. But I did go and try and find some more interesting games as well, right?
And this is all based on our projection. So it could turn out that, I don't know, one of the teams that we don't talk about today, if there are any, is actually going to win the league. I mean, that's
Well,
happens. Maybe the Renegades are legit and we're sleeping on all their games. But
well, well, I'll get into a little bit of that as we get into the show as well too. I don't foresee something like that happening, but it is worth mentioning. While the USFL last year had you had a better general idea of how the season was going to go. I know the Bandits became the Showboats, and I think that was the only move in the USFL, but you generally knew how these teams were going to go. It was their second season, a lot of returning players on both sides. That's still the case for the UFL, but there's a lot of new faces on a lot of different teams. The Brahmas actually, their team looks a lot better than it did last year. Granted, their quarterback situation last year was not entirely the problem of quarterback play, is they couldn't keep anybody healthy back there.
I
I am
mean, I
curious
guess
to see how this all
partly
shakes
on
out.
quarterback play too, but
I mean, yeah, there was a lot of problems with quarterback play. We're getting
I
ahead of
mean,
ourselves.
Ice Cream had like 2 good games. So
We'll, we'll get to who I thought was one of their best quarterbacks last year here in a little bit as well. So the season is coming up fast as we're recording here live. It is March 7th. Kickoff's March 30th. It's not that far away. And how else do you kick off the United Football League season than with the champions of each previous league? Of course, two-time champion Birmingham going to take on XFL champion Arlington. This one they're actually going to Arlington for, which is interesting. But if Arlington's kind of the hub city, it does make sense. You can catch that 1 p.m. Eastern. It'll be the official kickoff of the UFL season. I'm interested to see how this goes. Now, like I said, Arlington, they won because they were the second best in the South, but let's face it, they were like seventh in the league, fifth,
yeah, and they were
sixth in
just
the league.
healthy at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. That there's no way they're going to be able to sneak into the playoffs like that again this season. But it worked for them last year, and let's face it, they took care of business against DC, which that's my second game to watch here. The XFL Championship rematch, Week 3 rematch, Part 1, DC versus Arlington. There is no USFL rematch because the Maulers, even though they signed somebody in the offseason, they are dead. They no longer exist. So we will not
Brutal.
see a USFL Championship rematch. I'm curious how this game is going to shake out because again, turnover on both sides, but it seemed like DC kind of got figured out near the end of the season, and Arlington definitely had the medicine to beat them, and they handled them pretty well in that championship game.
Yeah, I think this is true of most leagues as they start out. Their most successful style of play early is going to be a very simplistic style of play.
Mm-hmm.
And so as your teams get more advanced throughout the years, eventually it becomes very easy to beat the team who only does simple things. And I mean, that's even true of go back to college football generations ago. The teams who did the fundamentals right and nothing else would win national championships. But then teams added on top of that eventually. And you started seeing, actual like modern offenses develop, right? And I think that's kind of what happened to DC is they just latched onto we can block better than almost anybody else in the league. We're just going to run it down your throats and not worry too much about anything else. Our passing game isn't great. We don't need it to be great. We're going to keep it very simple and we're going to run the ball. And it worked for basically the entire season until it didn't.
I don't know how different that offense is going to look this year.
Right.
but some key pieces to that offense are coming back with some new additions that might change things up. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Next game I've got, I mean, you knew this one was coming, right? Memphis at St. Louis. It's actually on 420. That's the only other date that I have up here. My two teams, I really can't say a ton more about that other than that's why I picked it. I'm excited to see this one. If you're unaware of how the schedule is going to work, every XFL team will play every XFL team twice, with the exception of the Roughnecks. They are officially a USFL team because Houston had a team in both
Mm-hmm.
leagues. They preferred the Roughnecks name over the Gamblers name for some reason, which
I mean,
I
so
kind
so does everyone else.
yeah, well, and the other thing too, the one that where I'm sitting here, I'm like, you know what, I absolutely have no problem with this happening. The Roughnecks played in Houston, the Gamblers played in Memphis, right? The city of Houston has a
Yeah.
little bit more backing behind that Roughnecks name. I get it. I understand why people might be upset about it, but that's just how it is. So consider the Roughnecks part of the USFL. They will play every USFL team twice and then play all the XFL teams once. However, the base of that team is the Gamblers. Also in week 4, though, we have DC at Birmingham. And let's be honest, DC was the best team pretty much all of last year until they ran into Arlington in that championship game. The Stallions might have been the class of the USFL for 2 years. DC was the most fun team to watch in the XFL last year. Even when they lost, that one loss to Orlando, I mean, it was an insane game to watch. So
Right.
this should be a game that everybody absolutely has circled here.
Yeah, Birmingham has been phenomenal, and we had talked about that with USFL, maybe potentially part of that being because all the games were in Birmingham, at least that first season.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually had fans supporting them. But then it did carry over into year 2. They have a legitimate squad.
Yeah.
It's more than just having home fans when nobody else did. We'll see how that travels this year, but I do think it's a legit team.
There's no traveling, and you'll notice that they're hosting DC. You want to guess what other XFL team they're hosting?
Um, St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't worry, I have that game highlighted as well. Going on to week 5, San Antonio at Arlington. Now, again, San Antonio finished the season 3-7, Arlington 4-6. Arlington wins the championship. San Antonio, and for that matter, Orlando, was in the mix to go to the playoffs pretty much
I
until the
know.
last week of the season. So this very well could be a highly contested matchup, and there's going to be some bad blood between these two teams. I'm excited to see this one happen. What I do know for sure is that if either of these teams wants to make the playoffs, they're going to have a winning record. That's just how it's going to be this year. Next up, Houston at St. Louis. May the 4th be with you. Now, why is this one circled? Because that's the one me and Doug are planning on going to. So,
A
well, I'm sure we'll be there with everybody else in our Star Wars regalia, cheering on our respective teams here. But we hope to see you all at the Battle Dome. I'm looking forward to this one. Doug, I know you are too.
Of course, it's gonna be great.
And I'll be 31. Holy shit. Crazy. Next up, week 7, we already briefly touched on it. St. Louis at Birmingham. It's very, very intriguing to me that Birmingham gets to host the 2 best teams from last year from the XFL this season. What are your thoughts on this?
Why not? I'm sure it wasn't intentional. Like, this is a quirk of scheduling, not
Right.
a planned thing. Sure does make it interesting, and it certainly does help Birmingham. And I don't think they needed help, but
And we're gonna when I get to the players to watch, I kind of go I don't really go in any particular order as far as teams go, except that I put the teams that played in the championships at the end. So keep that in mind. And we're gonna end with Birmingham. Well, there's a reason.
yeah,
Also, week 7, San Antonio at Houston. Now, Wikipedia claims this to be the Longhorn rivalry, the Longhorn State rivalry, whatever they called it.
Okay.
Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But the fact that it is going to a rivalry, a budding rivalry at that, is going to get to survive a league merger like this is awesome. And oh, by the way, they could play in the championship potentially. There's nothing that says that these two teams can't make it. Let's face it, San Antonio was figuring things out. I don't know that the Gamblers were doing so hot though. That's where the issues kind of come in, right?
Hopefully they imported that Roughnecks defensive line.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. And then last but not least, week 8, DC at St. Louis. This is a game we went to last year. Such an electric atmosphere. If you are going to go to a UFL game this season, I recommend trying to make your way to St. Louis for week 8 for this matchup. I make no promises one way or another, but I know that if I can, I will find a way to make this happen because that was an amazing atmosphere to be in for a football game.
Absolutely.
Now, the often mentioned players to watch. We'll start with the XFL, looking at the Brahmas. Quentin Dormandy, he was a backup or started as a backup in Orlando this year. I expect he will probably have the starting job for the Brahmas this year. He's bringing along his friend, tight end Cody Latimer. He was a top target for the Guardians last year. I'm interested to see how they connect going into this season. At wide receiver, Marquez Stevenson, he was a standout at Houston. I'm very excited to see how he works into this offense as well. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Delonte Scott is returning at defensive end. He was previously on the practice squad for the Falcons. However, he did play for the Brahmas last year as well.
And you might recognize that name from winning Defensive Player of the Week almost every week for us for the Brahmas.
Exactly. And then the first of a couple former Bears that I'm going to point out on here, Joel Iabungwe, inside linebacker. He's had a interesting path, but he was with the Bears for about 4 years, looking for a little bit of a career resurgence here, I think. It's going to be interesting to see if he's able to get things going for them and if he finds his place in this league, what that's going to mean for him going forward. Moving on to the St. Louis Battlehawks. Adrian McCarron's back. This was huge news, and there were a couple other additions to this team that seemed equally as big, namely Max Borgi and Ja'Cour Pearson. Why are those names huge? Well, that's like your number 2 running back and your number 1 receiver from last season in the league. Now, Pearson avoided a serious knee injury. I know there was some stuff circulating online, speculation, fear that he had really fucked up his knee. They saw him on crutches. He's going to be fine. Max Borgi, though, he has decided to leave football and is pursuing another career. So after the Battlehawks signed him, he changed his mind, and that's fine. Wish him the best of luck there. They only got a guy that's, been a amazing backup, kind of emergency back in the NFL, and Wayne Gallman. I mean, this dude, I remember I picked him up off the waivers in fantasy a couple times because hey, guess what? Saquon Barkley blew his knee out. Who the Giants go to? Wayne Gallman. This dude can carry the rock. I think their running game is going to be just fine. Backing up AJ McCarron is going to be Brandon Silvers, kind of a perennial spring league guy at this point. He really starts to find his stride after he gets a game under him. So maybe not the best, hey, McCarron's down, you need to go in. But if he has to be an extended starter, they've got their guy. Also returning to the team this year, Hakeem Butler and Darius Shepard, both back at wide receiver. And then a corner. Yeah, as long as they catch the ball. They both had brick hands at times last year.
Sure. But when they're catching the ball, it's the scariest wide receiver duo in the league.
And now you've added Ja'Cour Pearson. I would argue that this might be the scariest receiving core in the league this season. And at least to my eye, 3 dudes that don't mind sharing the load of receptions here.
True.
Last but not least, one player on the defensive side of the ball I wanted to highlight, Mikael Wright. He was with the Sea Dragons last season, and he was, I think, the best defensive back for Seattle last year. That's a huge addition for the Battlehawks. They got very rich this season in kind of the dispersal draft that they had here. Next up, we'll go to the defenders, and DeAndre Francois is joining the team, but returning at starting quarterback, or projected to be the starting quarterback, is Jordan Ta'amu. I don't know how to feel about this. And the reason I say that is Abram Smith is also back, so it looks like there's just going to be more power running here and not so much depending on the passing game. I'm not saying Ta'amu can't pass. I'm not saying DeAndre Francois can't pass. But they're not pass-first guys.
I'll say it then. Ta'amu and Francois are not the greatest throwers of the football in the league.
Yeah.
I would say the Battlehawks have the top two, maybe. So it's the good part for the defenders is they run the ball very well. So if that's going to be your game plan, at least do it well.
Mm-hmm. DJ Swinger also coming back on the defensive side of the ball at safety. He's 32 though, so he's in this position where he's not trying to make the NFL anymore. I can't imagine like some of these other guys are. Ta'amu, DeAndre Francois, maybe even Abram Smith. Swinger's out there just playing football. You love to see it. I'm excited to see what he does.
Yep.
There's not much else to say about that. Moving on to the Renegades, I foresee a quarterback battle here. Holden Ahlers has been added to the roster, and returning is Luis Perez, who, again, another spring league quarterback hero, going all the way back to the AAF. This is going to be exciting to see how this quarterback battle shapes out, really. Also returning, Davion Smith at running back, and then a couple guys from around the XFL from last year. Deontay Burnett at wide receiver. He had one of the he was the first player to have a passing touchdown and a receiving touchdown in league history. Oh, by the way, he's also the first player, one of the players involved in the first double pass touchdown in league history. This is a huge addition for the Renegades. I do think that they're a better team than last year. I think they're going to win more than 4 games for sure. I also think Vic Beasley on the defensive side of the ball is going to be a huge addition for him as well. Vegas did not have a ton to write home about last year. Vic Beasley was one of those things to write home about, though.
Fascinating quarterback battle here. You have to think Perez goes in as your likely starter.
Mm-hmm.
But the lefty out of East Carolina.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well, Nailers is just a fun quarterback. I know you know that watching him play East Carolina.
Oh, yes. He's
a slinger.
Well, and it kind of works out perfectly because Holton Ahlers is a big dude.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go straight into the USFL now. The Showboats also have a big dude playing quarterback. Cole Kelly is back. And dear God, you want to talk about a large quarterback. I follow them. The Showboats do a really good job of getting, snippets and pictures from practice up on social media. I don't know if that's just a USFL thing. They're the only ones I follow that I've been following that closely, especially on Facebook. But they have shown a few pictures of their quarterback drills, and it looks like Bryce Young and his offensive line. Except it's reversed. It's Cole Kelly and the other quarterbacks. Like it
looks like one of us standing next to Doug.
Yeah. Yeah. About like that.
Yeah, Cole Kelly's 6'7", I believe.
Yeah, like 270.
If you don't believe in Cole Kelly, go look at how Southeastern Louisiana finished 3 years ago and how they finished last year, and tell me that Cole Kelly was not important to that team.
Mm-hmm.
So
they also have the dual threat at wide receiver back this year. Derek Dillon and Vinny Papali, they are back this year. Of course, that is the son of Invincible Glory, Vince Papali. And then last but not least, another Roughnecks player dispersed among the league, William Likely, a cornerback here. He was definitely the best defensive back for the Roughnecks last year. It seemed like he was always getting a breakup or an interception when they needed it. Very excited to see what he's going to be able to add to this Memphis defense.
He will likely find the ball in the air.
See what you did there.
Yeah. Thanks.
Next up, we have the Michigan Panthers. Now, there's a lot more to like on this defense. This might be the weakest roster in the league. I looked
That's what I
through
like
it.
to hear.
I looked through it 2 or 3 times. I recognized one name pretty quickly, Kai Nakua. Why do I recognize him? Not because of Puka. I recognize him because he sucker punched Alan Cross at the end of the Miami Beach Bowl in 2013, 14 against Memphis. However, he is the brother of Puka Nakua. And oh, by the way, their other brother, Samson Nakua, is also playing for the Panthers at wide receiver. The second name that I recognized was Rondell Carter, and he's a defensive end. And the fact that I really only recognized one offensive player because of his brothers, and I recognized the 2 defensive players, kind of tells you this team is probably going to be the little engine that could. If you want to pull up Michigan's roster and see if you recognize anybody else worth shouting out here, please, by
We'll do it
all
right
means,
now.
go ahead. I was struggling looking through that roster, man.
Brian Lewerke is potentially their quarterback. All right.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, you'll also notice this is the first team I haven't mentioned a quarterback for. So
Oh, they have EJ Perry too. I actually like EJ Perry.
I saw EJ Perry.
And Carson Strong's on the team. Dude, these quarterbacks are mid, but kind of fun at times.
Yeah. I saw
I
EJ
actually, all
Perry,
right,
but I
so
also don't know
my
that EJ Perry is
favorite
really worth going over.
my favorite player on the roster is Patty Fisher, middle linebacker out of Northwestern. He plays his heart out. You
Which
can
is
at
why he's
least
in
say
this
that.
league.
Right. Right. He's your classic lunch pail, first guy in, last guy out, white football player, but also he's great. And he's part of that Northwestern team that beat everybody's expectations a couple of years ago, made the Big Ten championship. Patty Fisher was a huge reason why, and did get a shot at the NFL. Clearly didn't work out, but trying his hand at the Michigan Panthers. Good luck to him.
Let's see what happens. I do think the defense, even with everything you said, the defense is going to have to be the strength of this team. This is my pick for worst team of the league this year.
Depends on what they can get out of EJ Perry, Carson Strong, and Brian. Still can't believe they got Lewerke on the team. That is insane. Why would anyone sign Brian Lewerke? I'm sorry. He's better quarterback than I am. I give him that.
I hope so. Next up, we have the Roughnecks, formerly the Gamblers. That's how you really have to think about this team. And I want to point out Reed Sinet. He was with the Brahmas briefly last year. We talked about the injury bug that destroyed the Brahmas quarterback room to the point that Paxton Lynch even ended up on the team. Sinet was the best Brahmas quarterback last season, in my opinion. Unfortunately, he just got hurt. Wasn't able to play the rest of the season. I am excited to see what he does for this team. And you got to love it when there's a fullback involved. Former Bears great Ryan Nall playing fullback for the Roughnecks. I'm excited to see what packages they bust out with him there. And then another name, probably a handful of people are going to recognize out there, Reuben Foster playing linebacker for him. This Roughnecks team is going to be very, very interesting.
I lied. I was looking at an old roster. Updated roster does not have Patty Fisher for the Michigan Panthers. So
even
I
worse.
like this team less. They still have Brian Lewerke and EJ Perry, though.
Perry. I knew they had EJ Perry. I almost put him on here, but I was like, man, because that's the other thing. You look at their quarterback room, who's really going to start for Michigan? I really have no clue.
Hometown hero Brian Lewerke. It's got to be.
Last but not least, the two-time champions, the Birmingham Stallions. I think they're going to have a quarterback battle on their hands. They've got Matt Corral and Adrian Martinez coming in this season. They have about 4 or 5 quarterbacks on the roster right now, but I figure it's probably going to come down between one of those two guys. It doesn't stop there, though. They got Bo Scarborough at running back, former Packer Amari Rodgers at wide receiver, and another former Packer, Jay Sternberger, at tight end. This offense, I think this is the best offense in the league.
Potentially. There is a big difference, and we have seen this before already, between having names that people recognize and legitimately being the best team.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it's hard not to like this roster.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm kind of in both camps at the moment. Like, I'm reading the entire roster right now. I recognize like half the names, which is pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But also, I don't want to trust that right off the bat,
And the last player I have to highlight here, a name that I recognized immediately, TJ Carter, who, in my opinion, is the best defensive back I've seen play at Memphis. And this is fully acknowledging that Bobby McCain has, paved a 10-year career in the NFL. I think TJ Carter was better in college, and he's finding himself in the UFL this year playing for the Stallions. I think he performs well. He'll find himself back in the league. Again, like you said, name recognition doesn't really mean a whole lot, but at the end of the day, it does kind of put you in a better position. There's a reason people recognize these names, whether it's because they're a fan favorite or because of their talent from a previous team. They're recognized for a reason.
Larry Roundtree, Amari Rodgers, Adrian Martinez is back there as well.
All names I mentioned. Well, not Roundtree, but
that's wow.
Yeah. It's kind of intimidating to look at if I'm being completely
Marcus
honest.
Baugh too. That's cool. And they have a Southern Illinois corner.
Oh, I completely missed that.
Madre Harper.
This defensive backfield is about to be insane.
I recognize Carlo Kemp on the defensive line. Hercules Mataafa. Nice. All right, anyway. I can get carried away with this. This is all just me watching too much college football and knowing all these guys.
But that's all I've got for the UFL right now. I'm excited for the season that's coming up here. And I know you want to get into some of these other leagues.
They got Bubba Bolden and they got Slade Bolden and Victor Bolden Jr.
They got all the Bolden brothers, huh?
It's funny. And Chris Blewett, kicker, Marcus Baugh, I've already said. That's sweet, dude.
Your Ohio State kicker's back in St. Louis, by the way.
Sweet. That's good to know.
And I think Destroying is in the league as well. I've
heard that.
I have to see what team he signed with. One player that I wanted to point out too, that's not on any team before we do get into the ELF is the next league we're going to talk about here. Joe Powell, made famous, at least in my mind, in the XFL for returning the first kickoff for a touchdown in the new kickoff format for St. Louis. He played last season for Arlington, won a championship. He is moving on to indoor football. He will be playing for the Carolina Cobras of the National Arena League. So, dude just loves to play football. He goes out and balls. He's going to have fun playing some indoor football this season. That's it. ELF time.
Mike Rose is back for St. Louis too.
Nice.
He was great. Sterling Hoffrichter, punter. Let's go.
That's what I said. I said your Ohio State boy's back.
He's not Ohio State. He's went to Syracuse.
Whatever.
Sage Dockstader. You got Sage Dox Tater. Let's go. Quinterio Cole. Nice. Hakeem Butler. I know we've talked about him, but I'm just all right. I'm nerding out over these rosters. I gotta stop. All right. Anyway, so internationally, there are actually a lot of leagues now that carry American football, and so much so that American football, at least in flag form, is going to be in the Olympics in 2028. So I think it's time to start recognizing that other countries are sometimes legitimately good at football. Not fully, but they're getting there. And it is kind of fun to look at what other countries are doing with football because we have seen European players come into the NFL and do pretty well. Not very often. It does happen. We have seen Mexican players come in and perform okay at times. The big Mexican league is really just kind of just getting started. Kind of same with the ELF though, right? It's all being formed right now. So the CFL we already mentioned is kind of the biggest one internationally, been around longer than the NFL, right? It doesn't even count for this discussion. Also, they play in the fall. I'm not talking about fall football in this episode. Another fall league that we're not talking about is the X League Japan. Been around a long time. Really interesting stuff. They play in the fall. Their championships in January. It just happened, right? We're not talking about the X League. We're going to talk about spring and summer football and a couple of major leagues. Main league in my mind right now is the European League of Football, which has some kind of partnership with the NFL. I don't really know what that entails entirely, other than they get to use some of the names of former NFL Europe franchises. So you might
And
recognize some of these names.
names and logos for that matter.
Yes. Like the Frankfurt Galaxy used to be an NFL Europe franchise.
The Rain
Uh,
Fire were an NFL franchise.
I think it's Rhine, but yeah,
Whatever.
it's fun to say Rainfire. I have a Barcelona Dragons hat in the mail for the record because that's a sweet logo and
Mm-hmm.
the Dragons. And it's really starting to gain steam. So actually, the ELF has only been around since November of 2020 is when they were formed. They have very quickly amassed the best teams in Europe to play internationally. And there was a lot of pushback, which I didn't know until researching for this episode. There was a lot of pushback, especially from the German leagues saying, hey, we've tried this. International play has not worked for some time in Europe. Good luck if you want to, but we have been playing American football since, the 60s with our German leagues, and it really hasn't expanded much for us. So after those league officials said that, all of those German leagues' top teams left for the ELF. So that's where we have the Frankfurt Galaxy, the Hamburg Sea Devils, right? They bolted as soon as they could. Really interesting to see then other countries' leagues kind of seeing the same thing happen. The Milano Seamen were dominating the Italian football league for several years. They went ahead and made the jump. They thought this was a move up for them to go into the ELF. And we've seen some teams form at the ELF level, like the Paris Musketeers. Um, we've seen some teams kind of reform because the ELF is back, like Hungary's Enthroners. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that city name, but they weren't really trying to play internationally because no organization existed for it. And now that it does, everybody's really excited. Everybody's on board. Also, fascinating to me, they've had some real buy in from NFL guys. So there are some active NFL players who have some ownership stakes in some of these teams. Also, Pro Football Hall of Famer Joe Thomas has signed on to be an offensive line coach for the one of the teams is the Ravens. What city are they? What country are they? It's a good question.
Munich Ravens in Germany.
Yes. And he said it was just a really fun opportunity. His family wanted to see Europe. He's like, well, while I'm in Europe, I'm going to be an ambassador for American football. And so I don't even know if he's going to be there the entire season.
And
But
we saw FCF champion go play in Vienna for the Vikings and win the championship there. Jackson Erdman, of course, who I'm talking about. If you're listening somehow by chance, please come on the show. We'd love to talk to you. D3 legend, just dominating both leagues, leading them to a 10-2 regular season and then a championship at the end. It's crazy to me. Just I am curious. You got a note here about how many American, Canadian, Mexican, Japanese players can be on a team.
mm-hmm.
I am curious to see how much that hinders the league, how much that helps the league, and I wonder if we're going to see any non-American quarterbacks lead a team deep into the season.
So I have answers to both of those questions already. One, I would say other international leagues have had success with that kind of a model. So, especially Japan has been around for a long time. The X
Mhm.
League has been around technically like going on 40 something years with a similar model to that. They only allow 2 foreign players for each team on the field at the same time. So it's pretty restricted. It's very much Japanese players. The difference for the ELF is with the European Union, the way it is, there is a law against discrimination for employment across European country lines. So when they say foreign players, they're talking about US, Canada, Mexico, Japan, players who have played football in legitimately foreign countries. But the European Union member nations, they all share talent. So it is really the best football talent from the European continent, plus a couple of Americans, wherever you can find them. And it's been pretty successful for country specific leagues so far, like Germany, like Italy. Um, we've seen the best of those teams go to the ELF. I would say it's going to be a successful model for them. And it depends on your definitions of success too, right? Like, is this meant to get people in Europe engaged in American football? This is probably the best way to do that.
Mhm.
Is the goal of your league to push people into the NFL? First of all, why would that be your goal with the European League of Football? And second of all, no, this is not the best way to do that. But I don't think that's their definition of success.
Yeah.
Then the second question you had, uh, it is very possible to win a league like this with a non-American quarterback. However, American quarterbacks dominate.
Dominate the
It
league.
is true.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
for
one of those things
example,
that
though,
they've just been doing it longer.
right, the X League reigning champions have a Japanese quarterback. They have an American running back, but they have a Japanese quarterback. The Italian Football League, the championship that I went to last year, both of those quarterbacks were Italian. So it is doable to have native or continentally native in the European League case quarterbacks carry you to success. However, the reigning champions of the ELF do have an American quarterback, formerly of Weber State, Jadarian Clark also broke, I think he set the record for touchdown passes in a season.
Doesn't surprise me.
And he won league and championship game MVP honors and re-signed with the Fire. So we'll see Jadarian Clark again. Don't blame the Fire for that decision.
Not at all. It's just good business.
But we have a little bit of time before the ELF kicks off. That is at the end of May. So they're basically going to be running all summer long. But to me, the ELF has seemed like that the best of the second tier of international leagues.
It is a paid subscription to watch as well, which is somewhat annoying, but it makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the case for some of these leagues, and we're going to get to some free like YouTube games here. But ELF has proven themselves worthy of having their own Game Pass subscription.
Could the YouTube games perhaps be on the LFA, the Liga de Fútbol Americano Profesional?
Yeah, that's part of it. They also have their own LFA network, though.
Do
so
they
there are
really?
some games that you can stream all of the games if you have LFA network and whatever. It's the Mexican Football League, the Liga de Fútbol Americano Profesional. The 2024 season kicked off last week, so we're fully underway with the LFA.
I love that they have two prehistoric mascots here, the dinos and the raptors. This is awesome. Like dragons is becoming a more and more, I feel like I see dragons as a mascot more and more now. I need more dinos. I need more raptors. I know Regina University, I think they're the tier, the dinos too. We need more of that. Come on. I love it.
So the LFA is actually relatively new. They just last season had Mexico Bowl 6, which is their Super Bowl. Technically, they've been around for 8 years, though. They took 2 years off because of COVID restrictions. But the Mexico Bowl 6 champions were the Caudillos of Chihuahua, and they're led by former Auburn Tigers and Saskatchewan Roughriders quarterback Jeremy Johnson, who did set the LFA record for passing touchdowns this season last year. So yet again, yes, American quarterbacks are kind of the dominant, the cheat code, if you will. Also, if you are an Auburn fan and you recognize Jeremy Johnson, I'm sorry. Those were not great years for Auburn, but he's really good now in the LFA.
I just want to say, we can get back to the LFA here real quick, but the fact that all these teams are losing football games and losing their league to teams quarterbacked by American players really does not bode well at all for them in the flag football coming up in the Olympics.
I agree. It's gonna be some domination for a minute, but I'm okay with that as an American.
I also am okay with that.
So they also have a restriction on the number of foreign players you can have. It's up to 5 per team. They have a specific restriction on the number of Canadian football players you can have, being 2. I think that is because they assume you're going to load up on American players. Of that 5 you're allowed, and if you can get CFL guys to come down, that would be incredible. But we're going to put some restrictions on that and make sure you're not just buying a CFL team basically and importing them to Mexico. For the most part, the foreign players are American, and actually going through the rosters of these teams, a significant portion of them are Division I players who just found their way down to Mexico to continue playing football. And those are the players who get the highest salaries, of course. I also want to shout out that one of the teams is the Gallos Negros, which translates to Black Roosters.
Or Blackhawks.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. But the LFA is, as I said, already kicked off. Recommend checking it out. Seems like it's a decent time. Like half the league is based out of the state of Chihuahua. The other half seems to be based out of like Mexico City, with like 2 other teams. So it's pretty regional at the moment.
I
I
mean,
kind of understand that though.
Chihuahua is what butts up to Texas.
Right.
Granted,
Exactly.
Juarez, but the rest of Chihuahua.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of understand that if playing too much further south, like you're getting into the jungles of Mexico, and also you're getting closer to the equator. And I, for one, do not want to play football in the summer on the equator.
I
So
barely wanted to play football in the summer in Southern Illinois, and that's not even the South.
right. um, but yeah, shout out to Jeremy Johnson dominating Mexican football. It's good stuff. Other than the international leagues, I mean, I guess I don't want to stop there entirely. Those are the 2 biggest ones that play in the spring and summer. There are, of course, several other leagues. A lot of countries play some form of American football now. For the most part, those leagues fall under the IFAF, the International Federation of American Football. And you can find those leagues by going to the IFAF site. The IFAF is also the organization who got flag football into the Olympics. So, kind of the conglomerator of all these different leagues. They do actually also have some control over USA football, which might be familiar sounding
Mhm.
because that's like what most youth leagues in America report to. Also, the biggest flag football leagues in America are under USA football. So that's kind of where flag football being in the Olympics and not tackle football is coming from. Tackle football in the Olympics would be nuts.
I
I don't know if
I,
that's
I will
possible.
say it's. You say I don't know if it's possible. I think it's going to come. I don't
We'll see.
see a world where it doesn't come. And get with me here.
We
We
have a
got
long ways to go for that, though.
we do, but especially if the UFL survives and continues to thrive, and the ELF, LFA. Yes, the other countries will still be sending their best. The NFL is not going to fucking release players, but guess who will? The UFL. And that, honestly, I think that gives other countries the best chance. I still think the US is going to have a major advantage, but
All right. Here's a
there's
here's
a
a way to
path to
think
it.
of this. Here's a way to think about this. Have you heard of the Dream Bowl?
Yes.
So, for those who
Yes.
have not, the Dream Bowl is the champions of the X League playing against a team of like an all-star conglomeration team of the Ivy League. Uh, it's the Ivy League All Stars against the best team in the highest level of Japanese professional football.
Yeah.
Last year was the first time Japan won that game, and it was 10-5. So,
I would also like to mention they have high school all-star games, international high school all-star games.
mhm,
And the Texas freshman team, I don't remember what country it was, but they beat every international opponent they played. One of the games I tuned into, they had the third string in for the Texas All-Stars, and it was I've been beaten that
good
bad
time.
once in my life. And apparently they were doing that every single game.
So, yeah, I would say we have a long ways to go. Um, we'll see.
It'll come. I think it'll come.
Might be a while.
It
Other
might be a while.
other than these leagues, I would consider these like the ELF and the LFA are like second level international leagues, first level being CFL. by itself. Then you have the LFA and ELF. And you have everybody else reports the IFAF. But then, other than your outdoor leagues, there are also indoor football leagues, which
But
is
not
a
the FCF.
very different sport. Arena football, indoor football, whatever you want to call it, whatever the league happens to be named at the time, uh, is pretty different than 100-yard football. Arena football is a very exciting game. I happen to know the record for touchdown passes in an arena football season off the top of my head for some reason was 98. So, and that's like in a 10-game season. So it's exciting time. I think the best way to think about which indoor or arena league you should pay attention to is to just find which one has the Iowa Barnstormers in it. And that's the one that's good at the moment because the Iowa Barnstormers are an iconic arena football franchise and will be in the highest level of arena football forever.
Yes.
It's also one of the greatest helmets in all of football.
In all of football. Like, no arguments. It is one of the greatest.
So there's the Arena Football League, the American Indoor Football League, the National Arena League, just the Arena League. The one that matters is called the Indoor Football League, the IFL, because that's
Which
where the
is
Iowa
crazy.
Barnstormers are.
Which is crazy because it used to be the ALF. The biggest issue with indoor football, with arena football, is stability, and it has been for years.
Yep.
The AFL's gone under 2 or 3 times. The IFL even was in danger of going under a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And the FCF went under for a couple different reasons. By the way, looked up their Wikipedia page here. The last sentence about the postponed season from 2023. According to the report, the formal announcement is expected in the first quarter of 2024.
Nice.
If that's fiscal year 2024, they missed it. If it's calendar year,
they
got a
3
month.
weeks.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Not counting on much there.
Yeah.
I did actually see a tweet or a post on X from them saying to watch out for a big announcement soon. However, I'm kind of expecting that was about something entirely unrelated to football. So, probably another crypto scheme. But
well, that's why they had to postpone the 2023 season, but
So the IFL is now the longest running indoor football league at like 9 years because the other ones keep folding and reopening. So it's where you can find the biggest names in arena football. The Tulsa Oilers, the Arizona Rattlers, the Bay Area Panthers are your reigning league champions, led by former Montana Grizzlies quarterback Dalton Sneed, who was a beast at Montana. So very exciting. This indoor football league season kicks off next weekend, which is a little bit scary because when I looked on their website and looked at each team's roster, not all of them are filled out. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe it's just somebody wasn't updating the website, but
I gotta say, I am disappointed that I'm assuming the AFL maintained the rights to the San Jose SaberCats because Bay Area Panthers is a fucking horrible team name.
I agree.
And the SaberCats were fucking awesome.
San Diego Strike Force, I like a lot though.
Yes, I agree. I agree. The Sugar Skulls, that's going to be a sick logo. The Duke City Gladiators is a fucking dope ass logo too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they have some good ones. I think the first game of the season is the Arizona Rattlers against the Northern Arizona Wranglers. Which,
nice.
Why do you have 2 teams in Arizona?
Because you get to call one Nah.
That makes it worth it. I agree. But yeah, if you can catch an IFL game this season, I do recommend it because it is an experience unto itself. And You kind of have to see it to believe it. Other than indoor football, if we go to the next rung down in what is still professional football, we're looking at some developmental leagues, which is a whole world that I didn't really know existed until researching for this episode, I have to admit. Um, there are two main developmental leagues in the United States, which are leagues that you can just try out for if you would like to. Usually they're going to cost money and not pay that well, but if you are legitimately good, you do earn performance-based stipends. I will say the Rivals Professional League has been known to be pretty stingy about their stipends, and even though they are performance-based technically, Gridiron Developmental League seems like the one to go for if you were just going to try out for a football team. As long as you're over the age of 18 and can afford to pay for your own equipment,
I think I actually have
give it a shot.
seen like advertisements for the Gridiron Developmental Football League before as well. Like I
They
recognize
have
some of the names on there.
they have a new team this year in Kentucky, so I am going to try to find my way to a game. That is now a goal of mine this Gridiron Developmental Football League season, which I actually don't know when it kicks off.
And I
Which
got to
is
say
another problem.
too,
I think it's the end of April,
yeah,
but
I got to say too, we're talking about growing football and how it's grown and expanded. I know we're talking mostly about spring leagues, but I remembered seeing something about this, and I thought that maybe it was taking place in the spring this year. I wasn't sure what it was. But girls flag football is becoming an official IHSA, Illinois High School Sports Association, or High School Association, sorry, state sponsored sport. It'll debut officially in the fall with their first championship in the fall of this year. However, the Bears have been sponsoring girls state flag football for a couple years at least and been holding the championships out at Hallis Hall. It's awesome to see that the game's growing the way it is. It makes sense too that flag football is kind of the first foray into women's football at a younger age. And again, I can't imagine they won't have women's flag football at the Olympics here in 4 years. Be awesome to see it be a heavily Illinois represented team because they got ahead of the curve here.
that would be pretty cool.
That's about all the state pride you're going to get out of me, though.
I lost what I was going to say thanks to that, though. So I hope it was worth it.
Oh, it was. It was.
No, we have the Owensboro Spartans.
Old
Kentucky.
Owensboro. They got a good White Castle there.
Nice. That's what I like to hear. So yes, the kickoff is April 27. So if instead of watching day 3 of the NFL draft, you felt like watching some developmental football, you can check out the the St. Paul Pioneers at the River City Rough Riders, which where's the River City Rough Riders? What are they based out of? I have no idea. And this website is very difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
Love it.
What are you gonna do?
Oh man.
But hey,
This is great.
I think that's about all we have for today, though.
Depends. We could keep going.
About what? Are you gonna talk about the draft? Or are you gonna save that for next week when Tug's here?
Well, that was the plan. So Tug should be back next week. Theoretically, we'll see.
I won't.
And when he is back, we'll be able to talk about the combine, because the combine happened and we haven't discussed it at all. And there was a whole new 40-yard dash record and all kinds of crazy stuff.
And there's more and more. I feel like every week there's just more fucking bullshit going on with Caleb Williams.
Yeah, and then now Dan Orlovsky's coming on the Pat McAfee show saying that he would rather take Jaden Daniels #1 overall.
I saw something insane about the Bears taking fucking JJ McCarthy #1 overall. And frankly, I'm just tired of all this. I just want whatever's going to happen to fucking happen already.
You know what? At some point, just gotta do something. Oh, man.
It's killing me, man.
If y'all took JJ McCarthy #1 overall, I would laugh very hard. That's what would happen.
I don't even know if it'd be the worst thing in the world, though. Sir, if half
there
of
are worse things.
If
Sure.
half of the stuff coming out about Caleb Williams is true, I mean just half of it, I don't know anybody's going to want to fucking touch him anyway.
Yeah. So here's my legitimate take on that while you're here. I think everybody's sick and tired of talking about Caleb Williams, and so people are making up stuff about him.
And that's the other annoying thing is that's why I said half, because I know some of this shit's not fucking true.
Yeah.
But it is absolute, like some of the stuff that was coming out very early at the beginning, even some of that, I was just like, this is fucking ridiculous. Why is this? Why would you even want to take a risk on this guy right now?
Yeah, and I don't believe any of it. I think it's legitimately people watched him play college football this season and watched him, I don't know, be a 20-year-old kid who has a little bit of growing up to do still, like everyone does at 20 years old. And so people are like, oh, he's a jackwagon, and then making up shit. He's very talented. And if you've seen him play a game of football, you can recognize he is very talented. Sorry. I mean,
like I said, and this has been my stance for a while. I don't care what the Bears do. I really don't. I just want it to happen, and I want the season to fucking start. And then I want everybody to talk about, oh, well, they should have done this, or why did they do that? Because it's not going to be, this was a great move. All right. I want to get to the part where we're complaining about shoulda, coulda, woulda, because that's what's going to happen. I would rather complain about stuff that should have been done differently than what we should do, because inevitably what we should do is going to piss people off, and they're going to be more mad than when they're talking about what should have happened. Because guess what? What should have happened probably wouldn't have worked either, and what did happen still might work. So,
right.
Oh, fuck this.
What should have happened is taking Patrick Mahomes instead of Mitchell Trubisky.
Or fucking Deshaun Watson. Like I fucking wanted them to do. But that's neither here nor there. If you want to follow us on our social medias, I'll have them in the description below on the YouTubes later, or on the podcast. If you're an audio listener, just check out the description there. You can check us out and support the show by going over to patreon.com/BDT football, or at twitch.tv/big dudes in the trenches, all one word there. If you head that direction, you can sub, donate bits, helps us out. You can follow us on Twitter or X, twitter.com, x.com/BDT football, facebook.com/BDT football. You can catch us live there as well. Head on over to Instagram, instagram.com/BDT_football. Check out our website, bdtfootball.com, or email us questions prior to the show at mailbox@bdtfootball.com. You can also check us out on youtube.com, as some of you are right now, youtube.com/big dudes in the trenches, all one word there, or just search big dudes in the trenches with spaces, and you'll find us there as well. You can head over to our Discord and chat with us there. We're on there pretty religiously, discord.gg/9GX3PTG36E. Suck it, Tug.
Nice. I love it.
Also,
quality Discord link read.
If you saw me going nuts last week looking for something behind me, this is what I was looking for. Bill Walsh, college football, the OG. I do plan on streaming this as soon as tomorrow night on our Twitch. So come back, join in
Ooh.
tomorrow, join in the fun. It'll be on this Twitch, not on my personal Twitch. I'll be doing anything I do football related is going to be on the BDT Twitch from here on out. The second thing I wanted to mention, we've been talking about kind of the international expansion of football.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently reading a book about the founding and the start of the NFL and how that started really when World War I was looking to destroy college football. It actually birthed the NFL. So it's called War Football. It's a great book. I've been reading it for 2 days. It is a history book. It could very easily be a history textbook. I'm not going to lie to you. It is a little dry to read, but it is very interesting, very fascinating. I've enjoyed it so far. And if that's something you're interested in, definitely worth picking up.
The BDT Book Club. Are we doing this now?
BDT Book Club, we can. You want to?
Honestly, not a bad idea. Let's
we can
discuss.
do this. We can read Brian Burlesworth's story or Brandon Burlesworth's story.
Oh,
I mean,
there are plenty of books about football.
There you go.
Football adjacent.
We got to get started already.
Oh man. I don't have anything else. I'm good.
All right, man. Hey, I never understood why they call them dentures and not substitutes.
Nope. Nope, not going there.
We doing Tug's thing?
Nope.
Peace out, Girl Scout. We will see y'all next week. And hey, maybe even tomorrow playing some Bill Walsh college football. Have a good night.